Which is the most important plague out of the 10 plagues to the Egyptians in the book of Exodus? How old was Moses when he saw the burning bush? Where does the book of Exodus start and where does it end? In the book of Exodus we read that God has hardened Pharaoh's heart. What does it mean that God has hardened Pharaoh's heart? Does God harden anybody's heart? All of these questions and much more will be discussed in this program. Welcome to your program, Did You Know? In this program, we shed lights to the Old Testament books just as an appetizer for everyone to better understand and better read the Old Testament. Did you know that Moses was 80 years old when he saw the burning bush? We know that the life of Moses comprises of 3 sets of 40s. The first 40 years, Moses has spent it in Egypt, where he grew in the knowledge of the Egyptians. And after killing the Egyptian, he fled to Midian. And at Midian, he spent another 40 years. At the end of the second 40 years, when he was 80 years old, he saw the burning bush. And then the last 40 years, Moses has spent it with the Israelites, taking them out of the land of Egypt, spending time at Mount Sinai, and then the wandering. And then he died when he was 120 years old. Today we're going to discuss the book of Exodus. The book of Exodus is an easy book. It's easy to understand, it's easy to read, and there is a lot of beautiful spiritual ideas that I'm sure we're going to enjoy talking about it. As we always do, we start with the name of the book. And as usual with all the Pentateuch, the first five books of Moses, the name of the book is the first few words of the book. So in the Hebrew, in the original Hebrew, the name of the book is the first few words of the book. But in the Septuagint translation that we spoke about before, the book took the name from its content. We understand the content of the book from its name, so that's why we have the name Exodus or Exit, because the exit or the exodus of the Israelites from the land of Egypt is the main topic of the book of Exodus. The writer, as we all know, Moses is the writer, as he is for all the 5 books that he wrote, the Pentateuch, and it's very easy to accept the idea or the belief that Moses wrote the book. He was there, he was an eyewitness, and he took from God himself all the details that we're going to speak about today. When did he write the book? We know also, as in all the Pentateuch, he wrote it during the time of the wandering, which is just before his death. And if we know that Moses died in the year 1410, so he probably wrote it in the year 1406, just before, or a few years before his death. The book comprises of a couple of main ideas. The first part of the book is the life of Moses. Very few chapters in the beginning that speaks about the life of Moses. And the book starts in Egypt. The book of Exodus starts where the book of Genesis have ended. The book of Genesis have ended with Joseph, his father, and his brothers are in Egypt because of the famine that happened. And everybody, 70 people, went down to Egypt. And the book of Genesis ends with the death of Joseph in Egypt. The book of Exodus starts from that point. So we are in Egypt. And the Israelites, the son of Jacob, the son of Israel, start to multiply. And they multiply very much to the extent that Pharaoh at that time start to get worried that these people are going to take over the land. And this Pharaoh, of course, did not know Joseph. So he started to put these people, the Israelites, into slavery. And they spent like about 400 years into slavery, and then it's time now for God to assign a redeemer, somebody who can take these people out of the land of Egypt into Mount Sinai in the route to the land of Canaan. So we start in Egypt with the birth of Moses and how did God kept him alive, because at that time we know that Pharaoh, because of the huge multiplication of the Israelites, he decided that he is going to kill all the newborn male. But God miraculously, because he had a wonderful plan for Moses to take the people out of the land of Egypt, he kept him alive. And then we know about the flee of Moses into the land of Midian, where he got married. And then the burning bush in chapter 3, where God appears to him to tell him about his mission, that he is the one who's going to be responsible about taking the people out of the land of Egypt. He goes to Pharaoh with his brother Aaron, and they start talking to Pharaoh about letting the people go. But of course, Pharaoh, because he was using these Israelites into slavery, he refused that. And here we know about the 10 plagues that happened to the Egyptians until finally Pharaoh gave up and he let the people go. In chapter 12, we have the crossing of the Red Sea. After Pharaoh have let the people go, Moses led them into the wilderness, into Mount Sinai, so he start crossing the Red Sea and then start going south. In chapter 20, the people are in Mount Sinai, and in chapter 20, we have the 10 Commandments. Starting chapter 20, we have the 10 Commandments until the end of the book of Exodus. All the events at that time happened in Mount Sinai. So in very short, the book of Exodus starts with the Israelites, multiplication in Egypt, the birth of Moses, and ends after the crossing of the Red Sea at Mount Sinai. Of course, at Mount Sinai, God did not only give Moses the 10 Commandments, but he also gave him the very detailed description of what is called the tabernacle. And we're going to talk about the tabernacle in details later on. So if you want to divide the book of Exodus, it's very easy. The first 12 books is Moses in Egypt and the plagues. From chapter 13 to chapter 20, we have the people crossing the Red Sea en route to Mount Sinai. And 20 to 40, the end of the book, this is what happened at Mount Sinai, and this is the giving to Moses. God gave Moses the 10 Commandments and the very description of the tabernacle. And the last few chapters of the book of Exodus, we see Moses start building the tabernacle, and at the end, the last chapter, chapter 40, we see God's glory appearing in the tabernacle, filling the tabernacle, and that's how the book of Exodus ends. After the break, we're going to continue our discussion in the book of Exodus with the main ideas, main chapters, and main verses, and then main spiritual ideas. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now we're going to discuss the main theme of the book of Exodus. Of course, the main theme of the book of Exodus that is very clear is the idea or the belief of redemption. Very clearly, we see redemption in the book of Exodus. This redemption starts with the last plague, which is the plague number 10 out of the 10 plagues, which is the most important plague. Why this is the most important plague? This is the plague where it happens that God has told Moses to bring an animal and a lamb, and then kill the lamb and get the blood from the lamb, put it on the doorposts. And this is called the Passover. Why the Passover? Because God has told Moses that the angel of God is going to pass over the houses of the Egyptians and the Israelites. And if he saw the blood, this means that this is a house of the Israelites. He's going to pass over them, and not kill the firstborn. But if he does not, if the angel does not see the blood, he's gonna know that this is a house of the Egyptian, and the angel is gonna kill the firstborn of the houses of the Egyptian. And we see here very clearly how the redemption of the Israelites happened because of the blood. That without the blood, there is no redemption. Does the angel need a sign to know if this is a house of the Egyptian or a house of the Israelites? Of course not. But because God wants to implement the idea and the belief that the only way for the redemption is through the blood, he asked Moses to do that, to take the lamb, kill it, get the blood, and put it on the doorpost. This happened in chapter 12, and this is a very important idea or principle or belief that the redemption is through the blood. The second part of the redemption is the crossing of the Red Sea, where we see the role of the water in the redemption. So if we put these two together, the crossing of the Red Sea and the Passover, we can clearly say that redemption happens through two things. Water, which is crossing of the Red Sea, which is a clear symbol of baptism. So number one, baptism, and number two, the blood, because without blood there is no redemption. We see this very clearly, the idea of redemption in the book of Exodus through baptism, water symbolized in the crossing of the Red Sea, and the Passover lamb, the blood that is put on the doorpost, that without it there is no redemption, there is killing of the firstborn of the Egyptian. Water and blood is very clear in the book of Exodus as a way, as the only way for redemption. We see the blood, of course, as we mentioned, in Exodus 12. This is a very important chapter in the book of Exodus, as well as the baptism or the crossing of the Red Sea in chapter 14. The second important point or theme in the book of Exodus is the commandment and the law. We know that Exodus 20 is the chapter of the commandments, and we're going to talk about the commandments in the next episode, but it's very important, of course, that one of the main theme of the book of Exodus is to tell the people about the commandments and the law. The last theme in the book of Exodus is the tabernacle, and the tabernacle takes about the second half, almost the second half of the book of Exodus. And this is very important. The tabernacle at that time is like the church in our days. It was formed of a big tent that can be moved. It can be put together and can be moved, because it was moved wherever the Israelites go, they take the tent or the tabernacle with them. It was formed of or constituted of two parts, an outer part and an inner part. In the outer part there is two things: an altar, which is called the bronze altar, where the animal or the sacrifice is being killed, and a lavatory in which the priest has to wash himself before performing any rituals. The inner part is very important, and the inner part is composed of two main portions. The outer portion is called the holy, and the inner portion is called the Holy of Holies. And between the holy and the Holy of Holies there was a veil that separates between the holy and the Holy of Holies. In the holy place there was three things: another altar, which is called the altar of incense, a candlestick, and a table of showbread. There was on that table 12 pieces of bread that symbolized the 12 tribes of Israel. The Holy of Holies is the most important and most sacred part of the tabernacle. In this Holy of Holies, only the high priest goes into it only one day, which is called the Day of Atonement, which is going to speak about it in details when we speak about the book of Leviticus. But only the high priest going into this place only once a year on this Yom Kippur or Day of Atonement to offer sacrifice on behalf of himself and on behalf of his people. In the Holy of Holies, there was the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant was a kind of box that was covered by a lid, and this lid was called the mercy seat. And on both sides of the lid, there was two cherubim spreading their arms on top of the lid and on top of the Ark of the Covenant. Inside the Ark of the Covenant, inside this box, there were three things. Number one, there was the tablets with the 10 Commandments. There was Aaron's rod that has budded, and there was pot of manna. And as we said, between the Holy of Holies and the Holies, there was a veil that separates between the Holy and the Holy of Holies. That means that the people and even the regular priests cannot go into the Holy of Holies because there was separation between the people and the Holy of Holies. Between these two cherubim, between these two angels, God appears in His glory to talk to Moses and to the people. So the tabernacle was the church at that time. This was the place where the people meet God. God comes to this place with His glory, and that's what we read in the last chapter, chapter 40, that glory of God has filled the place after Moses have ended with the building of the tabernacle. God's glory appears in the place. And this is how God communicated with Moses, with His people. So in short, there were three main themes in the book of Exodus: redemption through blood and water, the commandments and the law in the book of in the chapter 20, and the tabernacle in the second half of the book of Exodus. The main verses, I'm just going to read few verses for you from chapter 3, verse 7. This is when God have seen the slavery of the Israelites and have decided to send Moses to them. The Lord said, I'm reading from Exodus 3, verse 7. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up to that land, into a good and spacious land, the land flowing milk and honey. This is when God have decided that He is going to send Moses in order to save the Israelites from the land of Egypt. Of course, after all this short discussion, it's very easy to decide what are the most important chapters of this book. Of course, we have chapter 12, which is very important, the chapter of the Passover, and how the blood has saved the Israelites. Chapter 12 is the last plague, which is the killing of the lamb and the Passover. Chapter 20, which is the chapter of the commandment. And finally, God's glory appears in the tabernacle in chapter 40. I hope that you have enjoyed our discussion, our short discussion about the book of Exodus. And with this small introduction, you can better read and better understand the book of Exodus. God willing, next episode, we're going to continue our discussion in the book of Exodus with the major ideas and the most important part of all this study, the segment that we call Christ Revealed, so we can see where is Christ in the book of Exodus. Glory be to God forever. Amen. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at ot@cycnow.com, and we'll be glad to answer all your questions.